them the platform to come up.
Instilled this passion to help refugees.
We're here to discuss the future, and we're here to eat all this yummy food.
Hi, and welcome to a Working Lunch with Nordin. Today, we're fortunate to have Andy Davison with us. Andy, thank you for joining us.
That's a pleasure.
And today, we're going to be talking about the expatriate equation. Of course, you are the go-to person for the expatriate community in Malaysia, and have been for, I would dare say, a good couple of decades, and you're probably going to explain to me more. But tell us a little bit about the Expat Group. The Expat magazine is, of course, very famous. And tell us about what's going on with the expatriate community now.
Yeah, well, in terms of our business, TG Media is the name we go under. I started the Expat magazine in 1996 as a way of giving expats bite-sized bits of information about Malaysia. So it only covers topics relevant to people living here. So it's about Malaysian people, culture, food, places to go, travel destinations, etc., and some of the neighboring countries, but we don't really cover things outside of Asia. Since then, we've launched other publications. We've also got into digital arena with our expatgo.com website, and we've got a events business, which we've started to get into well, quite some years ago, but we got a bit more serious a couple of years ago, but that's all been on hold for the last year and a half, hoping to get back into it soon. And we also have an agency for the Malaysian My Second Home program. So we basically focus on the international community, although we found an increasing number of Malaysians who have been joining us recently.
Okay, nice. I mean, I think there's quite a large Malaysian community with international linkages, either
Exactly.
married to foreigners or studied overseas and spent a lot of time overseas. So there's a definite affinity there.
Absolutely.
Now when we look at the expatriate community, of course, a lot of people think it's like the British, the Australians, the Americans, and that's it. But how broad is the expatriate community here in Malaysia?
Well, it's very mixed. I mean, the thing I think was the big change came by 20, 30 years ago. When I first came out here in 1970, I was in Hong Kong, but I traveled around the region. Most of the expats were from the countries you mentioned. The multinationals tended to think they had to bring in often Caucasians to take the senior positions in their companies. But as time went on, they began to realize there were a lot of very talented Asians, and not just that, the fact that very often they didn't have the same expectations for all the expenses that go with bringing a foreigner away from Europe or the States out to Asia. So more and more often they took Asians as employees. So now if you go to any multinational, large multinational, you'll find there's quite a mix of nationalities in senior positions, and that's been the big change. And then on top of that, you've had a lot of expats just coming out to these countries looking for work when they arrive there, not even posted here, just on the hope that they'll find something. And that's changed the whole mix of expats quite a bit.
Okay, nice. One early question we've already got there is about expats and the economy. Now, we see expatriates bringing in a certain amount of talent. But I wanted to kind of look at the group of expats who are not here to work, but actually looking to retire here in Malaysia. What is that, and why is it important for Malaysia and other countries around the region to attract these people into the economy?
Well, first of all, let's say all expats to some extent make a contribution, because the mere fact they're living here and spending money or renting apartments that might be a little bit more expensive than are typically taken by locals, that itself benefits the economy. But the Malaysian My Second Home program was an excellent initiative in Malaysia, where people were basically encouraged to come here and predominantly retire, mainly because they were not allowed to work here, although there are some people who have jobs outside Malaysia or they travel a lot, and they've also joined the program. But the Malaysian My Second Home program has had between 40 and 50,000 successful applicants since it was launched at the beginning of this century. And they make quite a significant contribution to Malaysia because a lot of them buy houses, a lot of them buy cars, like most of them buy cars, some of them buy 2 cars. Their average monthly expenditure from research we've done runs at about 10,000 ringgit a month. So that comes to 120,000 ringgit a year. And it's pretty obvious that if you have a few thousand of those buying houses, spending this money, buying cars and other capital items, this starts to run into billions of ringgit of foreign exchange coming into Malaysia, which helps the economy. And that's just the financial side. Because also you've got the non-financial side, because the fact they've chosen to live here becomes an endorsement of the lifestyle that's available in Malaysia. And it helps to bring in tourists. It helps medical tourism because mostly older people will choose not to live in a country without good medical facilities. So there's both the very real financial contribution to the program and the fact that it's a good advert for Malaysia around the world. And that's why I've been a strong supporter of it now ever since it was launched.
Yes, exactly. One of the things I mean, I'm also an expatriate here in Malaysia, and I've been here for almost 30 years. My parents came over here and were posted here, and I think I just didn't leave. Because it was such a great place to stay. And one of the things that I like about Malaysia is the lifestyle and the availability of all kinds of food and the friendly nature of Malaysians. It's kind of a can't go wrong scenario in terms of a place to live. What typically defines the expatriate lifestyle here in Malaysia? What is it that you're seeing from your stakeholders, your advertisers, the people who engage with your website? What do they hope to get out of that, and how do they relate to the expatriate lifestyle?
I think that the fact is that Malaysia offers, as you say, a most enjoyable lifestyle for most people. The mix between the infrastructural development of the country and the cost of living is very attractive. So your income goes further, and that's obviously a huge plus for a lot of people. The fact that most of the population speak reasonably good English, and English is still the most widely spoken language, makes it another big attraction for people coming here. Personally, when I first came down here, I was very pleased with the fact they had pretty good roads. I could drive all over the country. I've always enjoyed driving. And having lived in Hong Kong and Tokyo, which has roads, but they tend to be jam-packed most of the time, it was really a pleasure to come down here and be able to go somewhere. But from our own research, we've seen people also find the food to be a major plus. And of course, the fact that Malaysians themselves are a lot more welcoming than some of the other Asian population.
Nice. When we look at this kind of expatriate lifestyle, it also kind of creates clusters, if I'm not mistaken. Not COVID-19 clusters, but property clusters. And somehow I see a direct relationship between good property, good education, especially, and this kind of lifestyle choice. What have you seen there?
I think you have to be a bit more specific. I mean, when you say property clusters, you're not talking about just expats living in them, or are you?
No, not just expats, but this kind of like they create I'm talking about parts of like Mont Kiara, Bangsa, even parts of Penang and Johor.
There are certainly areas where there tend to be a higher percentage of expats. But one of the things that does differentiate Malaysia from some other places is that there aren't exclusive expat communities. For example, when we went out to, and we do quite often, we do research on Malaysia, my second home visa holders living here. And we asked them who they mix with the most. The majority, far and away the majority, say they have more Malaysian friends than they do expatriate. Now that is a rather different scenario than you might say you get in Hong Kong or Singapore, where people are tending to mix with other expats. So here you're getting that mixing of the nationalities. And I think that's a big plus about living here. And a lot of people like that because they can get to know locals, because they are welcome. They're invited to their houses. they can go out and eat and dine with them. But having said that, there are some excellent property developments around here which are very attractive to expats because they've got all sorts of facilities in them, and they do offer a great lifestyle.
Exactly. And talking about lifestyle, and a lot of the expatriates are concerned about education. Malaysia has a huge range of international schools. I was fortunate enough to go to ISKL as a kid, where it was like an amazing facility, and the new campus, of course. Hi Hilda, we would like to send you a bill for this free endorsement of ISKL, but their new facilities are literally world class. And how important when expats come to Malaysia when they see these excellent international schools, and ISKL is by no means the only one. How important is international schools?
I think they're very important, and the fact that there was a good selection, not just a good selection of international schools, but of quality international schools, has been a big factor in attracting people. And of course, you have a lot of other people who just come here to have their children educated. Even under Malaysian My Second Home program, there are a number of people who basically just made the decision to come here because of the quality of international education, combined with the price that they charge, and decided they'd like to come and live here and see their children educated here. Some of the schools here, as you say, are absolutely excellent. They've got fantastic facilities, and since they were opened up to Malaysians, at least all Malaysians, as opposed to just a few people who qualified a few years ago, there's been quite a growth in the number of international schools. I think there's well over 80 in the country right now, so there's pretty good coverage here. It's good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, it's definitely an area that I've seen grow in that sense. When it comes to other parts of the economy, we see that expatriates like to travel more when you can, when possible during non-COVID times. How important is this community for some of the tourism operators here in the country?
The fact is, Malaysia is number one. It's a great location for people who want to see the rest of Asia because it's fairly centrally positioned. So there's a lot of countries, north, east, south, and west of it. But within Malaysia, there are many, many attractive destinations, and we try and highlight them in our media as much as possible. In fact, when we've done research of the expats that we reach, they tell us their greatest interest, number one interest, is in travel opportunities. So we try and fulfill that by giving them as much information as possible about it. And I think that's one of the attractions of Malaysia. They do have a lot of attractive destinations, and they're getting better at the upkeep of them. That was a problem some years ago. It seems it got better in recent years, although there are still some places which could do with some help. Hotels right now are a really very sad story. It's very disappointing to see that a number are being forced to close, and that so many are suffering, and so many people in the hotel industry lost their jobs or just hanging on by a thread. We hope that things will open up as soon as possible, and the government will start letting fully vaccinated people come back into the country so that the business can pick up again, because right now it's a sad story.
Mm-hmm. When we talk about this vaccine rollout, of course, Malaysia has been pushing hard to get people vaccinated. There's a wide range of vaccines available in the country. How important will it be for opening up of the economy, getting the vaccine equation right?
I think it's very important. That they did start off rather slow in terms of getting their vaccinations out, but recently they've done a very impressive job. And it's really good to see that they've gone from 2 or 3% of the adult population being vaccinated to close to 25% today. That's a great achievement, and hats off to them for that. But the vaccinations clearly are the answer to the pandemic, but they're not the full answer. What is becoming very clear is that there are people out there who've been fully vaccinated who are still getting sick, who are still being hospitalized, and they're still, unfortunately, some of them dying. But the good news is the probability of that happening has been reduced significantly by the vaccine. So it's part of the answer, but I'm not sure if it's the total answer, but in the end, it'll probably just have to be because there aren't many other options.
One thing I did notice that Malaysia has also started to become a destination for medical tourism, and you mentioned that earlier as well.
Yeah.
Why do people feel comfortable with coming to Malaysia?
Again, I think it's that mix of quality and cost. They have many hospitals here which are internationally certified. They have some excellent medical staff in Malaysia, and the prices are quite reasonable for the people who don't have full insurance. And for some people, they can combine it with a vacation as well and go off and visit some of the destinations. So it becomes a very interesting trip. Get yourself fixed, and a lot of people even come here for cosmetic surgery and get a holiday in the middle there while they adopt their new look. So yeah, it's been working well. It started off with just a lot of Indonesians, obviously because of proximity, but now there's people coming from all over the world because they recognize that the quality is here and it's good value for money.
Yeah, I notice a lot of my family members, whenever they come up from Australia, they straight away go, on day 2 after they've eaten enough roti canai and nasi lemak as they can possibly fit in their mouth, they go straight to the dentist. And that's
attractive. Yeah, there's no question about it. And as I say, you combine it with quality, and yeah, it's not too hard to sell, and it is picking up.
Yeah. Now, Andy, one of the things that we've seen also in the kind of last, well, I would say 2 years that this pandemic has really hit us, is the way people communicate has changed. Things have become a lot more digital. Usually, if we were to have this show, even although it's broadcast out there, we would sit down at a restaurant and enjoy a nice lunch. That's why we called it a working lunch with Nordin. But we just can't have lunch at the moment. But and you continually mentioned the fact that you've done a lot of research, and that this is something I think that a lot of companies are flying blind at the moment with the, like, how do we communicate to these people? How do we get to these people? These are, especially when we talk about our expatriate market, high net worth individuals with high propensity to spend. You understand this market. How do they get to them, and how can the Expat Group in that sense help deliver results for some of the companies who want to also get the results that they need to survive?
Well, we built up a fairly substantial database of expats who are living here. Obviously, it's constantly moving as people come and go, and even more so in the last year and a half as some of the people living here couldn't get back to enjoy the country. But yeah, you're right. I mean, this whole digital transformation is really being accelerated by COVID-19, which puts pressure on old people like me who are trying to keep up to date with it and have to keep asking their children to assist even for setting up this talk today. So yeah, it's been an adjustment, but it's not necessarily a bad one, although obviously we miss eating anything while we're talking today. But apart from that, I've got more use now to conference calls and doing it on the internet. But I must say, my preference would still be face-to-face meetings around a conference table. It's easier to read people, I think, when you can see them sitting across from you than just on a screen.
Exactly. And how can the Expat Group help companies who are trying to access the expatriate community?
Yeah, well, we offer all sorts of packages to people who want to reach out to expatriates, whether they're in Malaysia, my second home is, which we're very much involved in that program and communicating with resident visa holders, or it's the working expats, or other people who have that lifestyle interest. So yeah, we offer some very attractive advertising packages, particularly nowadays when times are tough, for those people who want to get out through our print publications or through our digital websites. So we already have quite a few companies that use us. Obviously, in recent times that revenue has fallen rather dramatically, but we're anticipating that it'll pick up again once the situation gets better here.
Nice. And is your group able to handle helping advise the government in terms of developing new policies or because let's assume that COVID-19 changes the world, changes the expatriate equation, changes the dynamic. There's going to be an information gap. Can you guys help the government design or future-proof this part of the economy?
I would say one of the disappointing things about the current administration, and to some extent the one before, is that they don't seem particularly interested in what we have to say. Now, to be fair, they've got other things on their mind, and certainly we're not a priority, but nevertheless, there are quite a few expatriates that live here. And in the past, going back 5-10 years, and with the Malaysian My Second Home program, with the economic transformation program, with the government transformation program, I was called into lots of meetings with government officials to give input from the experience that I've gained over the years I've been here. But of late, on a number of issues I've raised with the government, I get no response. Doesn't seem to be a lot of interest in the concerns we raise. So we're here, we have a lot of information we can share if people want to talk to us, but sadly, that doesn't seem to be happening right now. And I know I'm not alone. I've heard some of the business chambers also tell us they're having problems communicating with the administration. Hopefully that will improve. It needs to, I think.
Yes, and I'm sure, I mean, we will, hopefully some are listening today, and, hopefully I think some of the insights that you can deliver to them and help them, especially in terms of understanding what it means for investment into the property sector, investment into the different industries as well. I always think of Malaysia as a destination now. Malaysia is competing with Thailand. Malaysia is competing with Singapore, with Indonesia, with its neighbors around ASEAN and even further afield. And if an individual comes to Malaysia and they feel comfortable, if the individual comes here and knows that his wife will be, wife or spouse will be comfortable, and knows that his children will also have a good lifestyle, this will make it easier for him to say, okay, let's set up the factory, because he's a guy, he's a guy or a girl who's deciding where we're going to set up our ASEAN operations, where we're going to set up our factory in ASEAN. And the easier it's made for him, and the better we understand him or her, it actually makes it easier for people like Maida and Miti to deliver on the results that they need to do to get the economy moving in terms of FDIs. What would you have to say there, Andy?
Honestly, I have quite a bit of concern that a number of the decisions that have been made in the last year and a half have not suggested a foreigner-friendly government, and that obviously has an impact on investment. The Malaysian My Second Homers have, in some cases, been treated, to my mind, quite an unpleasant fashion, not being allowed back in the country after many, many months, despite being vaccinated, despite having their homes here, despite having nowhere else to live. They've been told they couldn't come back in the country. I understand you want to have controls of the border, but they seem to have been too extreme. Even for expatriates, the ones who had work visas were finally let back in the country, but again, they had to go through quite a rigmarole and have another review process, and yet they'd already been approved for the visa. So that shouldn't have been necessary. Those kind of signals are quite damaging in an international sense, because one of the things that most multinationals care about is they want to make sure their staff are going to be well looked after. And sadly, some of those companies that pull their people out, some of the people under Malaysian My Second Home have decided to leave the program, and people who are looking at investing here have made decisions not to come here. So it's really sad for me that over the last 18 months, I've received a lot of very negative emails from people who are saying, is this the country we thought it was? One of the things I try to do ever since I came here is to tell people this is a great country to come and live in, it's a great country to visit, it's a great country to invest in, and listing all the reasons why they should do that. So to see all these decisions have been made, which some people might regard as being anti-foreigner, anti-expat. That's been very sad, very, very sad for me to see it happen. And to receive so many emails from people who are very frustrated and very unhappy. So hopefully they'll make some effort to change things.
Yeah, well, I hope we do see an improvement there, and I hope that we do see things shift gears, and also as we now in our discussion look to shift gears as well. I wanted to ask you from a business point of view, from an SME point of view, from a young entrepreneur starting out in business, that when they say, okay, we want to now supply something to the expatriate market, if we define it as the expatriate market, what kind of thinking needs to go into an entrepreneur's head to be able to get to the point where they're able to deliver goods and services to an expatriate market?
For a local business to reach the expats.
Yes.
Yeah, no, expats basically, like most consumers, they want to feel they're receiving value for money. They want to feel that their business is valued. They like good customer service. The other thing is the follow-up afterwards is very important. Giving the support that they might need after they've made the purchase is also very valuable. So servicing customers is an important part of the equation. But expats, I've seen, are willing to try out many different things, many different places. They don't just confine themselves to international brands when they're anywhere. They're very interested in what's available locally and what's different. But they do look for value for money. And in addition to us spreading the word through our various channels, there's a strong word of mouth communication as well. So local businesses need to be very conscious that understanding the customer and making sure you're fulfilling their needs is as important here as it is anywhere in the world.
Okay, nice. And I just want to say hi to Marisa from Jakarta, and you often join us. Thank you very much for joining us again today. In closing, Andy, and firstly, I want to thank you for your time today. But in closing, what do you see happening in the next 6 months in terms of rollout of the COVID-19 vaccination and its impact on the movement of global talent / expatriates?
Well, in terms of vaccinations, the government seems fairly confident they'll get a very high percentage vaccinated by September, October. I'm hoping that that's a correct prediction, but the risk is the number of people who, for various reasons, decide to hold off vaccinating or choose not to get vaccinated at all. What they've seen in the States is a significant slowdown in the vaccination rate as they come up against the number of people who are vaccine hesitant. As far as the expatriates coming to this country, I hope the country gets back on its feet quickly, and I hope we can start to see expatriates coming in here. I think part of the problem has been in the past that expats are looked at as the expats who work here, the ones under Malaysian by second home, have been looked at very much like the migrant workers. Whereas I feel it might have been, they don't live in the same conditions. There are very few cases we've heard of expats getting COVID-19, although I'm sure there are some. So all the barricades they put up to let them come back in the country, to work in the country, has really sent a rather negative signal. So as soon as we can send out some positive signs that Malaysia's back, Malaysia cares about foreigners, not just Malaysia wants foreign investment, but they actually care for the staff they bring with them, for the people who move here, then I'll be happy again.
Okay, we want you to be happy, so the investors are happy. And I think that's one of the things that we've seen. It's a total approach to investment promotion that is required to be able to compete with our neighbors in ASEAN and further afield in Asia. So Andy Davison, thank you so much for joining us today. Really insightful, and we're excited to see the growth of the economy, the expatriate economy, and the expatriate market once more vaccines are done and the borders are opened up.
Good talking to you. Thanks.
Likewise. And
Bye.
we'll see you again next week, everyone, on a working lunch with Nordin. And thank you very much for joining us. And thank you again, Andy, for your time today.
That was